you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rajesh Devnani and I represent Hitachi Consulting, which is the global digital business consulting arm of the group. Uh, what I'm going to talk about over the next 10 minutes is around digitalization, which is effectively the digital transformation of enterprises, and our viewpoint on that and Hitachi's credentials into that space. But before I really get there, I know the time is short, but I like this tale, which I'll relate to you in about a minute, which tells us about the digital tsunami of sorts and the pace of transformation which is happening in the digital world and how it's coming at us. So this is a tale about the inventor of the chessboard, and the way it happened is that there was this peasant of sorts who invented the game of chess, and the king got so happy that he said, "Okay, come and ask me whatever you want, and I'll give it to you." And the guy said, "I'm a man of humble means. All I'll ask you for is, I've invented the chessboard. You put a grain of rice in the first block, double it up in the second, keep doubling it up from there onwards, and that's all I seek." And the king said, "Yeah, indeed, you are very, very humble in terms of what you're asking." And so they started doing it, and by the time they reached the first half of the chessboard, all the grain in the king's land was over, and they couldn't figure out a means beyond that. And this is just the first half of the chessboard. So there's an analogy to this put forward by a futurist called Ray Kurzweil, who talks about the second half of the chessboard. And technology actually is coming to us at a very, very similar pace like that, right? So now we are entering the second half of the chessboard of sorts, and technology will come and hit us really hard. So over the course of civilization, what we saw is the last 100 years have produced a lot more growth as compared to the rest of civilization, the millions and millions of years that existed. Now, out of those 100, the last 10 have been very, very, disruptive in terms of their impact. So, but if you really look back 10 years, a lot more has happened over the last 10 years. So, if you look back 10 years, there's no iPhone, right? iPhone got introduced just about 10 years back in July. So there were no smartphones practically, or smartphones which are truly smartphones. We had Facebook in most of its infancy kind of stage. We didn't have the Twitters, the Instagrams. If you talked about the cloud, people would think about rainfall rather than cloud computing, right? So that's the kind of, so even the last 10 years has been truly very, very transformative. But what's going to come in the next 10 or 20 is going to be extremely, very, very disruptive. So we have still been sailing. About 10 years back, we were sailing in very, very placid waters in terms of having large cruise ships, as you can see it. But what's coming to it now is there's a lot of disruption happening. There's very, very nimble competition biting at us, coming at a very fast pace, and innovation is being truly unleashed. And it's not a game only the large enterprises can play. The smallest of organizations, the startups are coming and disrupting along the way. So that's what's happening to the industry. So this is a paradox of sorts. All businesses are digital businesses as we speak today, right? So Gartner said about 3 years back that all businesses are going to be digitally remastered. And while it may not be entirely true, a lot has changed over the past couple of years. So now we stand at the cusp of time where each industry has been impacted, and there's a lot more to come. So think about the most mechanistic, the most primitive of industries like agriculture. There's a huge revolution based on technology which is happening in that industry, driven largely by IoT analytics, and which has to deal with farm productivity, multi-cropping patterns, and stuff like that. Now go to the other end of the spectrum and talk about entirely knowledge-based industries. So legal industry is a good example of that. And that's also getting disrupted in a very, very large way. So the future of work is very, very debatable. I mean, there have been studies which have been done. There's a very famous study by the Oxford University which talks about 47% of the jobs as they exist today going away in the next decade or so. McKinsey holds a very, very similar opinion on that, although they talk more at the task and activity level rather than the pure play job level. So a lot is going to change in the coming years. And what should be our fleet-footed, agile response to deal with this change that is coming at us at a very, very fast pace? So it's not only industries, it's also the entire ecosystems, it's entire societies that are getting disrupted, and each country of its sort has their own response to it. So Europe talks broadly about Industry 4.0, which is more focused around manufacturing and largely driven by Germany. China is a made in China 2025. In Asia, broadly, you're talking about smart cities. Japan talks about a Society 5.0, which effectively kind of reflects very well in terms of the aging society they have and how can they enable better productivity in that context. North America talks about industrial internet. In India, we talk about Make in India, Digital India. So all societies are getting transformed at a very, very brisk, fast pace. And the entire ecosystems are getting disrupted and changed, right? So we used to have a product-based paradigm. Now it's entirely moving on to outcome-based paradigms. We used to talk about owning stuff. Now, as late as last night, I was reading a particular report which talks about a futurist saying that in the next 15 years, 95% of people will not own a car because you don't need one, right? You've got the Ubers and the Lyfts of the world and the Olas of the world to help you out there. So that's happening to industry as well. I mean, that's the consumer segment, but even the industry is looking more at outcome-based model rather than a pure play possession model. And there's a lot of collaborative consumption, a lot of sharing happening in that space. So ecosystems are opening up. We have realized that the debate of closed versus open is futile. And an open ecosystem delivers a lot more value collectively to society and industry and to us as individuals rather than a closed. So all ecosystems are opening up. They're broadening in scope and scale. And then we are moving from piecemeal siloed optimization onto the optimization of entire ecosystem. So those are some very, very broad-based, broad brush changes that are happening in society. And it's a given fact that if your organization can adapt fleet-footedly to those changes, you will definitely benefit from that. There are proven studies talking about how you can really change this, shape this to your own benefit. So what is digital transformation? Now, I think the transformation word is really key in that entire context. And transformation is all about change. But change is a never-ending journey, right? So it's going to be, so what may be relevant today, what we may think of as the latest, coolest set of technologies and our disruptive ideas may become very, very archaic tomorrow. So we have to be constantly on the move in terms of how we are adopting our response and making that happen. And that's really the crux of it, right? So we have to not only change today, but constantly be on the change journey. So there's no defined destination per se. We have to keep making our way forward in terms of that. So in terms of the drivers of change, essentially, this is a model that we have put together. We call it the 5 pillars model. And effectively, it's all common sense, but what it essentially talks about is you have to, first of all, have a holistic response to change. You can't have piecemeal ad hoc responses to change. So you need to talk about right from the top, how do you inspire the digital leadership in your respective organization? How do you create the right ambience and right conditions for digital to flourish in your organization? That has to come really from the top. Then we talk about challenging value proposition. So digital is not incremental. It is non-linear, right? Digital will have non-linear impacts, and there will be winners and losers. So it's not going to be a very equitable distribution. It would rather be a winner takes all kind of a thing. So how do we kind of think through new models in terms of new monetization models, new revenue generation models, new exponential efficiency gain models? That's the kind of paradigm we have to move on to. And then it's about enhancing your customer experience, and that cuts across the board, whether you're a B2C or a B2B organization, which I think is very heavily represented in the room today. I think the customer ultimately is very important, and the customer experience is getting increasingly important, and we need to ensure that all our digital initiatives, technologies are really aligning in that direction, and we're moving forward with that. Now, we have squeezed a lot of operational efficiencies from the erstwhile lean technologies and done a lot with that. So that's done. And in comparison, I think all of you may know that Moore's law is also soon about to come to an end. So whatever we could squeeze in terms of the digital, the lean and the Six Sigma efficiencies we've already done. So the next wave of non-linear efficiencies will come from the adoption of digital technologies. And that's happening to a large extent already in the manufacturing space. So AI technologies are taking the AI world by storm. We have got AR, augmented reality, virtual reality. So there's a lot happening, and there's a lot more to come as we move forward. Now, the last but not the least is you can't really have a rip and replace approach. You have a lot of legacy estate and legacy infrastructure and build up in the organization. So how do you really optimize that while ensuring you're moving forward towards the future? So it's about having a slight kind of a bimodal approach and ensuring that you maintain, you keep running your business while you transform for tomorrow. So that's a bit of a dichotomy there, but that's equally important as you transform for the future. Now, essentially, underlying, you have to really put digital at the heart of your business, right? So there's no other way, because if we don't put it, competition is going to take over, and we'll not survive tomorrow. So, how do you become a digital enterprise? This is our viewpoint, and it's called the Adaptive Business Engine. We have successfully deployed across a host of organizations across multiple geographies in various industries. But the crux of this is really, it's all about very, very standard things like the behaviors, which essentially is people. It's about the process elements, which is about how are you aligning your processes, what is your end goal in mind, and then how you're adopting technology to make the best of it. So this is a complete framework of sorts. It's quite detailed, and we have thought leadership content in which it's kind of reflected. We'll share the URL details for that for you to access that content. So coming to Hitachi, I think Hitachi is a pretty old name. We have survived the test of time. We have been in existence for more than 105 years now. And we have been a leader in the technology space. And our basic goal, our basic motto has been social innovation at the core. So we've been helping societal transformation by the adoption of very, very effective technologies and solutions as we go along. So Hitachi has been in the Fortune 100 for a very, very long time. I think we invest a lot in terms of the R&D expenditure that we make. So we're talking billions here, and we are investing in the state of the art. So we do a lot of exploratory research, we do a lot of technology-based research, and then we do contextual research in terms of business. And the budgets are really in the billions of dollars, and that's what we do. So this kind of summarizes what our journey has been. So from a very humble beginning in about 1910, where we first introduced the Hitachi motor in a place called Hitachi, we've come a long way, and we've come a long way in terms of spanning across a diverse set of industries. But if you really see at the crux of it all, it is all about societal transformation. So we do a lot of resources-based industries, which spans energy, both nuclear and traditional sources, and also wind power, for example. We do a lot on the transportation front, urban transportation, a lot on the smart cities front. We do a host of stuff around healthcare. We do stuff around automotive technologies, and the list goes on and on. So there's a plethora of things we are in, but broadly they are structured in 4 business divisions as we speak today. The real underlying bottom line is that Hitachi is a digital enterprise. We have been a digital enterprise even before this became being called digital. We have utilized IoT before it was called IoT, for example. So we have been doing a lot of operational technology ourselves in our enterprise, helping a lot of our customers do operational technology, and likewise for information technology, which is spanned across the years. So in terms of credentials, our digital business is already in the billions of dollars. So we globally do about $5.4 billion worth of digital business. We have a largely global base, spread across the globe. So it's not, it is a Japanese company, but it's a Japanese company which is fairly globalized in terms of scope and scale. And increasingly, we are working across, diverse segments. So we do a lot of work with the governmental enterprises, the public sector enterprises across the globe. And we also work across the private sector. So it's a good, healthy blend and mix of business that we have with customers. So very quickly on the digital transformation journey, how do you really do it? How do you enable it? We have a methodology called co-creation, because our firm belief is we can't do it alone, right? We need to take our customers along in that journey and work with them very, very closely in terms of making the whole co-creation happen. So it's a branded co-creation methodology that we have. And how do we enable that? We enable that by something we call Nexperience, which is essentially next experience, and which combines design thinking approaches, which combines customer journey mapping approaches. And we do it collaboratively with customers, because real value is generated when you get the diversity of viewpoints, when you work collaboratively with the customers and make it happen. So essentially, our offering set is aligned across 4 distinct areas. We do digital customer experience technologies, which both in the B2C and B2B. We do the digital enterprise technologies, which is for running the backbone of enterprises. We do digital operations, which is things like smart factory operations, predictive maintenance, and the sorts of that. And then we do smart infrastructure, which is also enabling your infrastructure to become smart, whether it be utilities or elsewhere. So we have a host of offerings across these different spaces. And in terms of verticals, our footprint kind of spans across these 4 key verticals. We do work across urban, which is urbanization and smart urbanization of society. We do work across finance and public and healthcare. We do industry, which is largely the whole manufacturing-based distribution and water. And then we are also in the power and energy space. So this is something called LaMotta, which essentially is our new IoT platform, which has been recently launched. And LaMotta essentially is a short form for Illuminate Data. That's what it stands for. And essentially, this has recently been launched, but it is already in the top 20 rankings by IDC. There's a long journey, long roadmap for this entire product. So we will essentially, we are targeting putting all the assets on the digital footprint, and ensuring that they are managed most optimally, most efficiently. And that's really our end goal, which we're working towards. So this has got a whole lot of content. I'll take maybe an example or two. I think we do work across multiple industries. So one very, very notable example is what we're doing with rail in UK. And this is essentially a 30-year-old contract to supply 200 plus complete intercity express trains. These are the very high-speed trains in UK. And our SLA, our service level on that is to maintain them to an efficiency of 100%, almost 100%, right? Keep all the trains running all the while. So this is a 30-year contract, and it's as a service model essentially which we're driving at. So, and this is pretty complex because you're talking about ensuring train uptimes while trains are running through tunnels at a speed of 100, 140 miles per hour kind of thing, capturing data of those trains in a running state. So it's a kind of a technology engineering feat of sorts that we have achieved on this to make it happen and enable this. There's a bunch of stuff we are doing across the energy space, specifically in the renewable energy space around wind energy trading, and other stuff. Healthcare, we are doing a lot of precision healthcare technology, and the list kind of goes on. So there's a whole bunch of things we do across that. Smart factory is another area that we are very heavily focused on. So yeah, this is what it's all coming to, right? So in summary, industry is moving towards everything as a service, whether it be the consumer world or it be the enterprises. Everybody wants outcome-driven approach. Nobody wants to own very capital-heavy assets and keep spending a lot of money on them. All customers are demanding this, and this is what we are kind of really striving towards. So we have a couple of 30-year models in place. We do work with the largest telco provider in the US, where we manage their data centers, for example, and that's entirely on an energy as a service basis. And the bills are about, their energy bill exceeds $1 billion. So that's the kind of scale magnitude of things we're talking about here. So this is our thought leadership on, it's a book we have published, and it's the URL is there, but too short, so I'll request my colleague to share the details with you in terms of where you can access this book. It talks about our point of view on digital technologies, and how do we collectively engineer the new reality? How do we embrace it along with our customers? And how do we really make digital happen and a success in organizations? So that's it from my side. Hitachi is an innovation partner for the digital era for our customers, and we look forward to having some very active conversations with you. Thank you so much.